From efforts to resolve major global conflicts to discussions on bilateral trade, the American capital was at the center of this week's major news stories. To talk more about them, we're joined by our Washington correspondent, Reggie Cicchini. Reggie, let's start with Donald Trump's announcement last night saying talks in Cairo have produced what he calls an historic agreement on the disarmament of Hamas. What do we know about the announcement so far?
Well, Jaden, we know very little about it. This was put out by the president last night, suggesting that the Board of Peace has been somewhat meeting quietly over the last several months to suggest here that after a meeting with Hamas leaders in Cairo with various other nations, including Qatar, that some kind of agreement has been reached to result in the disarmament of Hamas. But we've heard from some Hamas officials to suggest that this is simply a draft framework. We have not heard from the Israelis as to whether they are going to be on board with this. And it is an overall question here as to what this deal may ultimately look like. Is Hamas going to slowly disarm? Is Israel going to slowly remove the military from Gaza? Are either side actually going to participate in whatever it is that the president here is announcing? We may get more from the cabinet meeting with Donald Trump later in the day on Friday. It could be seen as a step forward, but there is skepticism coming from both sides.
Reggie, staying in the region, Iran and the United States resumed strikes after a brief pause while the Israeli prime minister held a closed-door meeting with President Trump in the White House this week. What's the latest on the Iran conflict?
Well, I mean, look, after kind of an uptick in strikes over the last couple of days, after many days of a pause, there was a pause once again Thursday into Friday. U.S. Central Command saying that they did not carry out a strike inside Iran, but the Iranian regime suggests or alleges that they carried out strikes on American assets in the region, although that has not been confirmed. Donald Trump, through the week, Jaden, has repeatedly said that the Iranians are begging to make a deal, but at the same time said that he was going to beat them hard, in the future if they don't come to terms to some kind of diplomatic agreement. Although it's unclear where, efforts stand here in terms to try and get something negotiated between all sides, given we're seeing an increase in hostilities in the Strait of Hormuz. There is ongoing rhetoric through the Red Sea with the Houthis going after Saudi Arabia getting involved with the United States and carrying out strikes in Iraq. A growing fear here that this is going to widen long before any opportunities for diplomacy show up again.
And another major world leader was in the American capital this week, Reggie. Volodymyr Zelenskyy pushing for support in producing advanced weapons. What more can you tell us about Zelenskyy's visit?
So the visit here was important. Number one, it shows that there is some support showing up once again from not only the president, from the Republican Party as well. We saw a number of Republicans standing with Volodymyr Zelenskyy at the U.S. Capitol. Zelenskyy also met with members of Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, both producers of defense capabilities here, after the American president at the NATO summit greenlit a plan for Ukraine to be able to produce Patriot missile systems. Obviously, that's something that's going to take time, but it would help to counter an aggressive push from Russia. As we've seen just this week, more than 70 missiles were volleyed Wednesday into Thursday. The big question here is, what is support going to look like going forward? I spoke to the former American ambassador to NATO on Thursday, and he said that, well, it's going to take time. NATO as a whole, including the United States, needs to put together some kind of small package for Ukraine to be able to get through the winter, which is the most difficult time in this war because Russia oftentimes goes after the energy infrastructure throughout the country with its strikes. So Zelenskyy is leaning into the fact that there is more support. The question here, Jaden, is will Vladimir Putin try to sway Donald Trump? History has shown that he'll do that.
And finally, Reggie, Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc was in the U.S. Capitol for more trade meetings this week. Did anything productive come out of those meetings?
Well, it's unclear. We know that Minister LeBlanc is back in Canada. His people sent us a statement yesterday saying that Minister LeBlanc remains in contact with his counterpart, U.S. At the trade office, Jameson Greer, but Canada's chief trade negotiator remains in D.C. So that suggests here that there is something moving that may have been stalled over the last several weeks. Remember, ongoing conversations between the U.S. and Mexico, as they say Mexicans are more pragmatic and Canadians are more difficult. The fact that people do remain in the U.S. from the Canadian side suggests that conversations are rolling forward. But remember also this week, Jaden, Donald Trump suggested that he doesn't really care or want to see USMCA or CUSMA renewed, even though he signed that in his first term and claimed that it was pretty much the greatest deal since the history of time. So really not clear where things stand in terms of trying to get something agreed to between all countries. We know that several unions from Canada wrote to the USTR this week suggesting that there is some big dismay for the ongoing tariffs that are being levied on Canadian goods. There's a lot of work to be done, and it's an open question as where things stand.
Another busy week in Washington. We'll leave it there. Our Washington correspondent, Reggie Cicchini. Thank you.